I know that recently you have watched many videos about Norway. You have learned about Trolltunga's dramatic cliffs, about Erling Haaland, about the legendary Viking warriors. But on this channel, we are going to show you a completely different Norway, one you have probably never seen before. A Norway that is home to the most isolated island on Earth, located more than 2,000 kilometers away from the nearest human settlement. A Norway that has almost eliminated cash, where a single banknote could make you feel like an outsider while traveling. A Norway where death itself is not allowed to happen in the usual way. A Norway where more than 5 million people have come together to transform one of the harshest environments on the planet into one of the happiest places in the world. So how did they achieve this? Seen from above, Norway appears as a fragile strip of land bending along the western edge of Scandinavia, embracing the coldest seas of northern Europe. Every curve of its coastline reveals a new fjord, a new mountain range, or a new isolated island rising from the waves. No other country in Europe has such a unique shape. Its territory stretches more than 1,700 kilometers from south to north, with some sections only a few kilometers wide, squeezed between Sweden and 3 freezing seas. The truly astonishing number lies in its coastline. Measured in a simple straight line, Norway's coastline is only slightly more than 2,500 kilometers long. But when following every fjord and every island, that number expands to more than 100,000 kilometers. It is no coincidence that Oslo, Bergen, Stavanger, and Trondheim were all built along the water's edge. The sea has always been the only route connecting communities separated by mountains. And even today, Norwegian life has never truly moved away from the ocean. Farther north, beyond the Arctic Circle, lies the Svalbard archipelago, where the law requires anyone leaving the settlements to carry a firearm, because polar bears can appear at any moment. And yet, in this frozen wilderness, more than 3,000 people continue to build their lives. Why do they stay instead of leaving? The answer is surprisingly practical. Residents here enjoy complete tax exemption, while incomes are extremely high thanks to mining and adventure tourism. But above all, they remain because of something known as the Svalbard syndrome, an attachment to peaceful darkness, the northern lights dancing above their heads, and a feeling of absolute freedom that the modern world can never truly offer. Before we continue exploring this extraordinary journey, we are curious to know, if you had the choice, would you want to live in a place like this, and why? Leave your answer in the comments below. And now, take a look. You are seeing the most isolated island on Earth, Bouvet Island. If you were standing here, the closest living beings near you would not be humans on the mainland, but astronauts aboard the International Space Station, or ISS, whenever they pass through the sky above the island. More than 90% of this island is buried beneath permanent ice, surrounded by dark cliffs, rising up to 500 meters and plunging directly into the ocean. No harbor, no walking paths. Today, the only way Norwegian scientists can reach this island is by helicopter, from large expedition vessels to maintain an automated weather station. But what makes Bouvet Island a haunting legend is the mystery surrounding the island in 1964. When a rescue vessel approached the island, it discovered a lifeboat resting silently on the rocky shore. Inside were untouched supplies, clothing, and essential equipment. Yet there was absolutely no trace of any human presence, no remains, no survivors, and no sign that anyone had ever been there. To this day, history still cannot explain who sailed that lifeboat to the most isolated place on Earth, or where those people disappeared. If nature ever created a masterpiece that would last forever, Norway would be one of the greatest creations it has ever shaped. Millions of years ago, glaciers thousands of meters thick buried this entire land. These massive rivers of ice slowly moved under their own immense weight, crushing rocks, carving deep valleys, and sculpting the dramatic landscape we see today. When the ice eventually retreated, seawater flooded into those carved valleys, creating fjords, narrow inlets surrounded by towering cliffs, silent and almost haunting in their beauty. More than 1,700 fjords stretch along the coastline, making Norway home to one of the most vast and spectacular fjord systems on Earth. Sognefjord stands as the king of fjords, stretching more than 200 kilometers long and reaching depths of more than 1,300 meters, deep enough to swallow even the tallest skyscraper in the world without leaving a trace. Geirangerfjord and Norøyfjord, both UNESCO World Heritage Sites, feature towering cliffs, embracing emerald waters, where waterfalls plunge from hundreds of meters above. Above the fjords, Janteloven rises nearly 2,500 meters high, standing as the roof of northern Europe. Hardangervidda stretches like an endless ocean of rocks and moss, where wild reindeer still migrate freely. Jostedalsbreen, the largest glacier on mainland Europe, remains as a living witness to the ancient Ice Age. But Norway's harsh order is not only defined by cliffs that isolated humans for centuries, it is also shaped by the extreme nature of its light. Beyond the Arctic Circle, you will encounter a surreal reality, the phenomenon known as the midnight sun. From May to July, the sun completely refuses to set. You can play golf, hike, or kayak at 2 o'clock in the morning under sunlight that feels like late afternoon. The clock loses its meaning, and the human body's natural rhythm is pushed to its limits as darkness disappears. Then comes the price of those endless days of brightness, the polar night. When winter arrives, for months, the sun never rises. The entire landscape sinks into a deep blue darkness, cold and silent. This severe lack of sunlight is one of the reasons Norway has become one of the world's highest consumers of coffee and antidepressants. People here must learn how to confront loneliness, darkness, and the freezing cold of winter every single day. living in a landscape brutally divided by rocks, mountains, ice, and endless seasons of darkness. Norwegians could not operate society in ordinary ways. They were forced to survive through unusual rules and ways of life, unlike anywhere else in the world. First, let us step into their everyday world, where something used by almost everyone around the planet has been almost completely rejected: cash. If you are planning a trip to Norway with a wallet full of shiny euro or US dollar bills, prepare yourself for a cultural shock. You might not even be able to buy a simple loaf of bread. In this country, cash has almost disappeared from everyday life, and now only exists like a historical artifact displayed in a museum. Norway is currently one of the societies closest to becoming completely cashless, with more than 95% of all transactions fully digitalized, from a bus ticket, a cup of coffee at a street cafe, to the fee for using a public restroom at a train station. Everything can be paid through bank cards or mobile payment applications such as Vipps. Even elderly people selling homegrown vegetables by the roadside or street performers often refuse coins and banknotes. Instead, they simply place a small QR code sign beside them for visitors to scan and pay digitally. Cash is viewed with suspicion here, because many people believe that untraceable money is mainly needed for illegal activities or tax evasion. And this creates the foundation for another surprising reality that few countries would dare to replicate: complete transparency. In Norway, the concept of salary secrecy or hiding wealth barely exists. Every year during tax settlement season, the Norwegian government publishes a public list known as Skattelista on an online portal. With just a few clicks, anyone can find out exactly how much their neighbor earns, how much tax their colleague pays, or even the wealth and assets owned by the Prime Minister and the country's richest billionaires. Norwegians accept this level of openness as a natural part of building social trust. When every financial transaction is transparent and cannot be hidden through cash, suspicion between people is reduced, while tax evasion and corruption remain extremely low. However, a society where everyone can know whether you are rich or poor also creates another invisible pressure on daily life. To exist in a country where personal wealth can be visible to everyone, Norwegians have had to hold tightly to an extremely strict unwritten rule: the culture of humility. Here lies one of the strangest regulations and one of the greatest challenges to the natural laws of human existence. People are effectively forbidden from dying. This law may sound extreme, but it is not a cruel decision or a joke. Instead, it is a strict scientific measure created for survival and introduced in 1950. Located deep inside the Arctic Circle, the entire ground beneath Longyearbyen is covered by a layer of permanently frozen soil known as permafrost, which never fully thaws throughout the year. When a person dies and is buried in this frozen ground, the extreme cold turns the body into a form of natural mummification, preventing the normal process of decomposition. The terrifying consequences of this phenomenon were revealed when scientists exhumed several bodies of victims who died during the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. They were shocked to discover that, after nearly a century beneath the frozen ground, the remains were still remarkably preserved. Even more alarming, traces of the deadly influenza virus from that era were found to have survived in a dormant state, raising concerns about the possibility of future outbreaks. To protect this small community from ancient pathogens trapped within the ice, authorities closed the town's only cemetery. Since then, dying in Longyearbyen has effectively become impossible by law. When residents grow old, suffer from terminal illnesses, or approach the final stage of life, they are transported by air to hospitals on mainland Norway, thousands of kilometers away, where they can spend their final moments and receive a normal burial. If someone unexpectedly dies from an accident or a polar bear attack, their remains are also immediately transported away from the island. They do not try to change the harsh reality of the frozen Arctic. Instead, they have adapted their way of life to it, even reshaping one of humanity's most fundamental experiences, death itself. Look at Norway on the global export map. This is the king of salmon, the country that transformed Japanese dining habits by introducing salmon sushi in the 1980s. With its pristine cold waters, Norway possesses some of the finest and freshest seafood resources in the world, the kind of ingredients that even Michelin-starred restaurants dream of serving. But step into the kitchen of an ordinary Norwegian family on a busy evening, and you are unlikely to find pan-seared salmon or king crab on the table. Instead, the dish that often takes center stage is grandiosa, a frozen pizza sold widely in supermarkets at an affordable price. Norwegians have an almost unbelievable love for frozen pizza. On average, the country's 5.6 million residents consume nearly 50 million boxes of grandiosa every year. The dish has become so popular that it is often considered an unofficial national food. People have even created songs celebrating it that reached the top of music charts, and produced a perfume inspired by the scent of grandiosa pizza. This paradox comes from Norway's own difficult past. Before discovering oil, Norway was a nation of struggling farmers and fishermen, where long, dark winters forced people to rely on foods that could be stored for long periods, prepared easily, and consumed efficiently. As the country became one of the wealthiest societies in the world, the busy lifestyle of a modern industrial nation combined with those old habits of convenience and practicality, turning frozen pizza into the ultimate everyday choice, even above the expensive fresh seafood available from the surrounding oceans. This humble food choice may seem strange for a country with one of the highest incomes in the world, but in Norway, the amount of money in your bank account has never been the reason to live extravagantly. Their ability to adapt to contradictions does not stop at the dinner table with boxes of frozen pizza. It is deeply embedded in the way Norwegians raise and prepare future generations. In the middle of the Nordic winter, beneath temperatures cold enough to freeze your breath, if you walk past a cafe or a home in Oslo, you may witness a scene that seems shocking. Newborn babies, only a few months old, sleeping peacefully in strollers, left outside in the snow, with no adults standing nearby. To many foreigners, this may look like a dangerous act of neglect, but to Norwegians, it is a cultural tradition. They have a famous saying, "There is no bad weather, only bad clothing." They believe that exposure to cold, snowy air helps children develop stronger immune systems and sleep more deeply. Norwegians call this deep connection with nature friluftsliv, a philosophy of life centered around experiencing the outdoors. From infants sleeping in the freezing air to wealthy adults willingly leaving comfortable homes to spend weekends in wooden cabins called hytter, often without electricity or running water. Norwegians continue to seek challenges in nature as a way to restore balance in life. Look at the Royal Palace of Norway in Oslo. It is simple, modest, and lacks the grand barriers and intimidating appearance often associated with royal residences. But that calm atmosphere can completely transform when the spirit of community is awakened. Look at how these more than 5 million people celebrate together. When the national football team returns from a major tournament, hundreds of thousands of people gather in the square in front of the palace. There are no displays of excessive luxury. Instead, the players, coaching staff, and a sea of supporters all sit down together and perform a celebration known as Viking Row. Their voices echo through the streets as thousands of people lean back and pull imaginary oars in perfect synchronization, creating a powerful rhythm that represents unity and pride. The image of thousands of millionaires sitting together on the streets, rowing a boat in the heart of a modern capital, reveals the clearest answer to Norway's national identity. Beneath the wealthy exterior of the 21st century, Norwegians still carry the spirit of ancient seafarers, people who survived not by standing alone, but by relying on each other and pulling the same oar across a harsh ocean. The discovery of massive oil reserves beneath the North Sea opened a new era for Norway. But what truly made Norway different was not the discovery of oil itself. Many resource-rich nations have experienced rapid growth only to fall into crisis when their natural wealth began to decline. Norway chose a different path. Instead of spending most of its oil revenue immediately, the government created the Government Pension Fund Global, directing almost all profits from the oil and gas industry into investments around the world. Only around 3% of the fund's value can be withdrawn each year to support the national budget, including healthcare and education. The remaining money continues to be invested across global financial markets. Today, Norway's oil fund quietly owns an average of around 1.5% of all publicly listed companies worldwide, becoming an invisible shareholder in giants such as Apple, Nvidia, and Tesla. This wealth can be seen through very real benefits in everyday life. A Norwegian student can attend a public university without paying tuition fees, contributing only a small student organization fee each semester. A mother can take nearly a year of paid maternity leave while still receiving her salary. A patient, even when requiring long-term treatment, knows that their personal healthcare expenses will never exceed a certain annual limit before the government covers the remaining costs. This same wealth reaches even the most remote corners of the country. A small medical center in the far north can still have doctors available throughout the winter. A library in a town with only a few hundred residents can remain open and free every day. A classroom with only a few dozen students can still have enough teachers, even when located hundreds of kilometers away from the capital. By 2026, the fund had surpassed $2 trillion, becoming the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. It held stakes in around 7,200 companies and owned nearly 1.5% of the total value of publicly traded shares worldwide. Divided theoretically among the population, every Norwegian citizen would represent ownership of around $400,000 in the fund, although no individual can withdraw or use that money personally. The true value of the fund does not only come from the size of its assets, but from the philosophy behind it. Resources beneath the ground do not belong only to the people living today. They are also the inheritance of future generations. Wealth protected by a perfect social welfare system could easily lead people toward excessive comfort and arrogance. But in Norway, you will rarely see gold-plated supercars cruising through neighborhoods or billionaires wearing extravagant designer outfits. The answer lies in Janteloven, an unwritten set of social principles deeply rooted in Scandinavian culture for generations. In simple terms, it acts as an invisible brake that controls envy and discourages excessive self-importance. If you are wealthy, that can be seen as something positive for society. But if you use that wealth to show off, display superiority, or prove that you are above others, you may quickly face social criticism and rejection. This is why Norway's Prime Minister can still take public transportation to work, while oil billionaires continue wearing ordinary sweaters, old sneakers, and living in simple wooden homes that look almost identical to those of their neighbors. Behind the image of a wealthy, stable, and highly livable nation, Norway is still facing changes that could shape the country's future. As a nation stretching from temperate regions to the Arctic, Norway is already experiencing the effects of climate change. Melting ice and changing marine ecosystems are threatening coastal communities and the fishing industries that have existed for generations. The greatest challenges, however, come from the country's own success. An aging population is placing increasing pressure on the healthcare and welfare systems, while people continue to live in one of the most expensive countries in Europe, with high income taxes and living costs in Oslo among the highest in the world. At the same time, as Oslo becomes increasingly modern, many remote communities are facing the loss of young people and growing difficulties in maintaining essential services. Norway also faces the challenge of transforming its economy in the post-oil era. A nation that built much of its prosperity from resources beneath the sea must now find a way to continue growing without remaining dependent forever on finite natural resources. Norwegians have countless opportunities to leave, yet most of them choose to stay. Not because of wealth or convenience. For many people, the deeper reason comes from a sense of belonging to a place they have been connected to since childhood. They stay because of friluftslivet, because every weekend there is still a hike waiting for them. A place to return to, surrounded by nature. They stay because of Janteloven, because they live in a society where no one needs to show off in order to feel fulfilled, where the distance between leaders and employees remains small enough for people to feel equal. They stay because of communities where people still know one another, where children can freely explore the world under the protection of a society built on mutual trust. They stay because nature has never been just a beautiful backdrop to their lives. It is something that shapes the way they see themselves. The fjords, the mountains, and the endless winter nights have become a part of every Norwegian's memory. Norway is not the easiest place to live. Long winters, vast distances, and harsh natural conditions continue to create their own challenges. But those difficulties have created a unique connection between people and this land. A connection that no modern comfort can replace. Among all the choices offered by the modern world, Norwegians still choose to remain here, not simply because this is their homeland, but because this is where they truly belong. A strange, unexpected, and sometimes unbelievable system of life, yet one that is remarkably practical and deeply fascinating. Norway's true value does not come only from its wealth, breathtaking landscapes, or admired quality of life. What makes this country truly special is the way its people have found a balance between modern progress and nature, between development and the values that have been preserved across generations. Thank you for joining us on this journey to explore Norway. If you enjoy documentaries about unique places around the world, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and continue discovering more extraordinary stories with us. Goodbye, and see you again.